assessments can be very costly in our city. And let's be honest, who wants to pay extra money for a property when they're already paying monthly maintenance every single month? So special assessments are definitely not very popular topics with condominium owners, but they are sometimes necessary to take care of maintenance or some type of project within the building. And so it's really important that if you are thinking about buying a property in Miami, you're going to want to listen to this now. Hey everyone, my name's Jamey Prezzi. I'm a real estate agent in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. And today I'm going to talk to you about special assessments and what you need to know about them. But first, before I get started, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another update. We do put out new videos every week. Also, use the link in our information box and download our free relocation guide. We'll also add you to our weekly newsletter. And if you need anything, all of our contact information is there as well. Okay, let's get started. For those of you who do not know what is a special assessment, generally speaking, special assessments are additional fees that your condominium association may charge you that are over and above your monthly maintenance fee. That's a very general explanation of special assessments. Very often people will say, well, if it's a new building, then that won't apply. And you know, it could be true because obviously new buildings are built on different standards than the older buildings, and they may have some, less wear and tear than the older buildings just because of the quality of construction these days. However, just like on a new home, you may need to replace something. You always need to put some money aside whenever you own any type of property in case something like this comes up. It's also important to note that just like your monthly maintenance is probably based on the square footage of your unit, the special assessment and how much you may have to pay will also be based on the square footage of your unit. So the larger the unit, the more money you will have to pay for the special assessment. What happens if they pass a special assessment and you don't have the money to pay for it? Well, it really depends on the condominium association and how they have things worked out for the owners to pay. But I would say what I have seen over the years is if it is a significant assessment, several thousands of dollars, very often these condominium associations will try to seek some type of financing to finance the project and then allow the owners to break down these payments month to month and, forever how many years they've organized that assessment to be paid back. But just to know that when it comes to these really big assessments, the association typically tries to find a way to get it financed. But that's not 100% guaranteed that a bank will loan a building money. So it's always important to put some money off on the side for projects. Another reason why we may see more special assessments than some other places, and that is just because we have a lot of building codes and building regulations and different types of certifications that some other cities, especially even in Florida, don't even require. For instance, you may have heard about the 40-year certification. Not every county in Florida requires these types of certifications. So you may hear about it more here because Miami-Dade and Broward tend to be very strict in terms of these certifications because they want these buildings to be kept in really good shape. The 40-year certification deals with safety issues, which deal with concrete restoration, checking on the rebar of the building. It may be replacing some old elevators. So some of these projects can be very expensive depending on the nature of the certification. So I'm not going to get into that, but you can always Google 40-year certification in Miami-Dade, and I'm sure you will find lots of good information there. One thing that's really important to do when you're purchasing in a condominium building is to have a look at the budget and see if the building has reserves, because if they do, that means that they have sort of a history of collecting money for future projects, and that's a good sign that the building is being managed really well. Another thing to point out is that sometimes these assessments come up even if the building has reserves, because these projects can be very expensive, and a lot of times if the project runs over or there's some other expense that needs to be taken care of, the association will go ahead and pass an assessment to add in addition to whatever the estimated project cost is. And sometimes they'll even pass assessments just to kind of beef up a reserve fund. There's a lot of rules and regulations that go around these reserve funds and how these special assessments get passed. They can't just pass them left and right. I mean, they can pass them, but there's a very specific way in which they have to be passed and voted on by the owners of the building. So that's another long discussion for a different time, but just know that when you're buying in a condominium building, it's a good idea to definitely have a look at the budget and see if that building is carrying reserves. If you are getting financing, most likely the bank will require that the building carries some money in their budget for reserves. One thing that I think it's very important to note, especially when you're buying a condominium here, is not to assume that just because an assessment has already been passed and you are purchasing that unit, that the seller will pay off that assessment at closing. Some sellers want the buyers, as part of the negotiation, to take over those monthly payments after closing. Some sellers will pay off that assessment as part of the negotiation at closing. But what's most important to know is that if you are a buyer and you are purchasing real estate in a condominium that has an outstanding assessment, how is that going to be paid at closing? Because sometimes people assume that just because the seller is making payments every single month, that the buyer can also assume those payments after closing. And some associations have rules saying at closing that assessment has to be paid off before you can close. And if you are the buyer assuming that assessment, you could be on the hook for a very expensive fee if you were not preparing for that in advance. So when you are making offers on properties where an assessment is in place, it's really important to call the condominium association and find out how that is to be taken care of at closing so that you know what to expect. It's also important to make sure that when you are under contract to purchase a property, that you ask the seller and you also ask and read the seller property disclosure. Also press the association to help understand if there are any additional assessments coming up so that you know what to expect. Sometimes they won't always disclose that without an estoppel. Some associations are more open with their information. It would be great if everybody was, but they are not always. But it's very important that you understand if you're buying in a condominium building and there's assessment discussion or projects ongoing, that you may have to have some additional money to finish out that project. Just always make sure, especially if there's some ongoing work and assessments in play, that you know what to expect and you know what to expect going forward. One thing that I always tell condominium buyers is this: just like as if you were purchasing a single family home and you need to maybe put some money away in case there's, electrical issue, or you need to do something with the roof, or just something that could come up, do the same when you're buying in a condominium building. Put some money off to the side in case there are some unknown future expenses like assessments. No one likes to talk about them, I know, but it's good to know what to expect when you're buying real estate here. Okay, I hope you found this helpful. My name is Jamey Prezzi. This is my husband, Ognjen Prezzi. You can find us online on Instagram at the Prezzis, and be sure to download our relocation guide. All right, we'll see you soon.